I noticed that when you're sitting in the lab, you aren't reading the latest peer-reviewed journal article. He said you're reading books on global affairs, biographies of inventors, Russian literature. And he said, when you talk to me about some of these things that you're reading, your eyes light up. And he said, you should pay attention to that.
Welcome, everyone, to the At Depth podcast, the podcast where we spend our time talking with some wonderful entrepreneurs, leaders, founders, investors, you name it. At this point in time, we've had some wonderful variety of people on here. And what we're going to do, as always, is explore the through lines that connect what we value to how we lead, the things we choose to build, what we invest in, what we invest our money in, what we invest our time, our energy, our wisdom. So welcome to Natalya Wallin. She is the founder at Vitality and a lot more things that we're going to jump into as well. But Natalya, I think before you dive in and talk about yourself a little bit, I would love for you to just kick us off with what's the wildest or most interesting thing that's happened to you in the past month?
Oh, well, that's a great way to start. On Sunday, I ran to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and back up. And it was beautiful and challenging. I mean, running down the canyon, you sort of feel like you're flying. And it's just incredible to see this vast terrain unfolding across the Colorado River. You're watching the sunrise. Beautiful. And then there's inevitably the moment where what goes down must come up. The climb back up the canyon is about 7.5 miles back up for anyone who hasn't done it. And it has this beautiful way of demoralizing you.
It takes you out.
It does. But yeah, that was last weekend.
How do you push through that though, Natalya? I mean, like, let's just talk about that for a moment. Like, I've run down, you get the best part of what I would call a mountain climb. You get that first, and then you get to climb out. Like, what shifted in your mind as soon as you turned around?
I think you know, Ben, this is part of what I do for quote unquote fun. But we're going to clarify that is type 2 fun for sure. I like to use days like that as this deliberate, intentional mindset training. So as I train for something difficult, which there's plenty of carryovers to life, which I'm sure we can get into later, but I actually look forward to the moment of turning around and being unhappy, uncomfortable, and knowing that I've got a long haul ahead of me. Because one of the things I've learned and I've been training myself to do is to embrace the suck. So I use days like that on purpose to train my mind for whatever it is, whatever challenge that lies ahead. So there you go. That's how I train for life.
Everyone, welcome to Natalya Wallin at the At Depth podcast. And she has already successfully taken the conversation to the depths of the Grand Canyon and drawn a perfect parallel. I think people want to know a little bit about who you are, Natalya. So real fast, she's an executive ultra runner, founder at Vitality Venture Fund, which is very much of a nature-inspired biomimicry venture fund / founder support group system. I mean, it's much more than just take the money from A and put the money in B. And we'll let you dive into that a little bit. But you've got a wonderful connection as an ambassador with top tier impact. You've done some incredible stuff in the nonprofit space. There's the Lifetime Foundation athlete status as well. So just dive in sideways into that wonderful big pool of accomplishment and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you. Well, Ben, you make it sound like I'm very busy or something, but
you sound so busy. What are you talking about?
So maybe the place to start is, I would say I am an explorer at heart. And when I'm not on the road out meeting founders at their workshops or in the fields and investors across the country, I'm spending long solo hours, as we've just described, out in mountains or wild places. And maybe in terms of just context on me, my path has been unconventional. So I started,
Yes.
yes, I started my academic career in biology and molecular genetics. And I think you'll actually appreciate this. One day, my mentor in the lab, I was a year into my PhD in molecular genetics, said something that changed the entire trajectory of my life. And I always find these moments in life to be so fascinating. He said, I noticed that when you're sitting in the lab, you aren't reading the latest peer-reviewed journal article. He said, you're reading books on global affairs, biographies of inventors, Russian literature. And he said, when you talk to me about some of these things that you're reading, your eyes light up. And he said, you should pay attention to that. That hit me like lightning, Ben. No one in my life had ever said something like that to me. As you might suppose, me as a young, aspiring scientist, I was really trying to go for this very practical approach. And to have a mentor simply notice the spark and urge me to pay attention was such a gift. And it ignited a completely different path for me. I'm articulating this because you just outlined all these things that sound sort of disparate. But I love that you talk about through lines on this podcast. And that observation and insight from my mentor took me out of the lab into public policy, business, and a serendipitous meeting with a woman who wanted to build this public-private fund to address forced labor risks in supply chains around the world. I dove into that wholeheartedly, spent a decade building out the infrastructure, raising and deploying $75 million in projects around the world. And it was everything, Ben, from developing board bylaws to hopping on a plane to Liechtenstein to fundraise, to doing on-the-ground risk assessments in Indonesia and Myanmar and Philippines. And you talk about through lines. For me, it has always been this passion for systems thinking applied to complex, seemingly intransigent problems. And it's hit me. And of course, life always seems like a more clean, coherent narrative when you look back at it. It's been really an interesting and exciting journey. So that's where I am today.
It's so funny. One of my authors I love is Wendell Berry. And Wendell Berry, in the end of his book, Jayber Crow, which is this long life of this barber in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. And he says at the end of his life, while I lived it, it felt like I was on so many tangents and so many paths on a variety of different roads. But at the end of my life, today, where I sit, I look back and I can see it was all one straight, almost perfectly continuous path to where I am today.
That's beautiful. What a great way to articulate that sort of perspective on life. And actually, one of my absolute favorite books, and it was one that I read, I guess, probably 3 times last year as I've been on this journey. As you know, building a new venture, building a fund, there's just so many unknowns. And this, you're laughing, like that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. This book, The Lion Tracker's Guide to Life.
Oh,
yes, you read it?
No, I am going. It's on my list. I heard him do a podcast, and since that day, I'm like, oh my gosh.
But it aligns a bit with what you just shared there, that there's this sort of theme throughout the book that if you think you can see your life laid out before you, it's not your life's path. In nature and in life, if we're lucky, we see a partial print because he's telling all this through the lens of being a big game tracker in South Africa. So the whole concept, which just speaks to me so deeply, is you pay attention, just like my mentor in the lab. He said, I see the spark. I see this lights you up. And you move in that direction and pause and listen and use great wisdom. And then you hope you find the next track. I just enjoy thinking about life in this way. Doesn't that just keep it so alive, so dynamic?
Count me in.
Read the book.
I'm always letting the book recommendations arm wrestle in my Spotify little book reader list. And I think this one may have just won the arm wrestle contest. So
yay. Success.
I would love to hear you describe this? Because I think it would be helpful to people who are listening who are in any kind of inflection point, right? So I think about in life, there's some wonderful young people who will be listening to this too, who are, let's say, 20s looking to go from a job into an entrepreneurial venture or a career. There are people in their 30s who are just kind of trying to hang on, maybe got young kids dealing with that, like what it looks like to have a family. There are people listening who are investors who are just sort of done with the old and looking for something new. There are people who are nearing retirement, wondering what that looks like. There are people who are after retirement trying to figure out what the next step looks like. So that's a quick sort of picture of all the kinds of people that will listen to this. And I'd love for you to just maybe pick out a couple of those spark moments where you did this and you paused and you found the next track just sort of lightly imprinted in front of you and took another step in that direction. I'd love to hear a couple of stories so that I can learn. Because I'm inflecting constantly, I feel like, and it's like, oh my gosh, let's hear good stories of people inflecting well.
I love that. And I do think this is just such an important part of life, to be so present and attuned to where we're at and ready to adapt and be agile in the moment. So one of these moments, obviously I already expressed the story about my mentor in the lab. That was one key pivot moment for me that took me on a whole wild journey that I was not anticipating. Another moment that I'll never forget was coming back from a consulting project I had done in Kosovo for 3 or 4 months. And I was coming back and I was about to walk into a job interview. And I got a phone call like 4 minutes before I was walking in. So I'm standing there. I'm in my suit and heels, trying to get all geared up. And I get this call from a woman who I had worked with at the State Department a few years before. And she said, "What are you doing right now?" I said, "I just got back from overseas. I'm about to walk into an interview." And she said, "Stop everything that you're doing. There's this woman you need to meet. She wants to build a fund. She wants to do something incredibly innovative, take on an almost impossible problem, and she's looking for a systems thinker." And she said, "I think she's looking for you." Then I went and met this woman, and then we worked together side by side for 10 years. So that's another moment. Sometimes I wonder how those moments come about. On the one hand, something moved her to call me. And I also think that if I hadn't been in a state of mind and a state of being to take that call and recognize that opportunity in the moment, it still might have never happened. So I think these are very interesting moments, these moments of serendipity.
Take me along the journey. Where did that little step, like, I want to follow a few tracks here.
Okay.
What started to happen in your life as you walked that path?
I started to feel this deep sense of obsession, purpose. Suddenly, a lot of these other pieces of my academic career and professional experience that had led up to that moment were sort of all clicking into place. It was the scientific approach to rigorous problem solving, the ability to think about systems and ecosystems, and my love of just being thrown into the deep end and say, go to Myanmar, drop in, interview people on the business side, government officials, civil society organizations, pull that together into a risk assessment. Is this a viable opportunity? Just looking at so many different perspectives, looking across disciplines, across sectors. So I had this moment in that process when I realized that the fact that even back in the day in the lab, I was reading Russian literature, poetry, biographies, global affairs while I'm studying genetics. I had this moment of being like, oh, maybe there's a reason my brain is so quirky. So I discovered on that phase of the journey that a real strength of mine was being able to see opportunities across sectors and disciplines and really find unique opportunities that might otherwise be missed.
Let's talk a little bit about this concept here, because I wrote down a little note earlier that I just said generalists solve ambiguous problems. It's interesting. You've not used the word generalist yet. I'm inserting that word here, and maybe we could elevate that word a little bit, because the other word that you've used is this label of being a systems thinker. And I'd love for you to just, as best you can, try to define what that means, because I am so curious. What is a person who is defined as a systems thinker? Are they a generalist? Are they a generalist plus plus? Are they less than a generalist? Teach me.
Well, Ben, first of all, we don't like to be labeled. All of us mutant generalist systems thinkers. No, but I think I see it as just an ability to, yes, go deep into some specific field or area of expertise and really learn, but then really enjoying and leaning into the skill set that then helicopters up, and knowing also when I don't need to be the specialist. In fact, where part of my entire philosophy with any teams that I've built around the world, and this very much applies to the team that I built at Vitality, I intentionally surround myself with people who have complementary areas of expertise to mine, who have a deeper level of knowledge that I can always be learning from, and where then I get to play in the space that I love the most, which is applying expertise from all these brilliant minds to something that requires a unique and innovative perspective. So that's to me what it feels like to be a generalist. I don't know if that's a helpful definition per se.
The picture that came into my mind is any interview I've watched of a composer or orchestra, not necessarily an orchestra director, but a composer describing what they do. Like, I'm sitting here conjuring up the music, and then I'm sitting here just pointing at you to play your part. And then inevitably the music comes to life that was in my head. Am I somewhat close? Work with that analogy. How would you change it?
Well, that's such an eloquent way to put it. I do. Actually, I'm going to steal that from now on, Ben.
Okay, you can have that one.
I do think that's a good analogy. And in fact, it touches on something that I just really, really love to do, which is whether it's finding people with different skill sets to bring together on a team, or it's out finding founders who are, I think, doing really brilliant things in an overlooked or unconventional way. I get so much joy from finding all of these gems out in the world and seeing if we can play together, build something, do something, create. So actually, I do really like the analogy of it being like composing music. That's a much more, much more beautiful way to say it than I was thinking.
I'm just letting this whole thing wash into me here for a second. What a beautiful picture. I want people to feel kind of how that works in a daily operating environment, because we've got some wonderful people listening to this who operate in what I'll call the brass tacks of daily life.
Yeah.
Take me on a little journey, if you can, to this place of what that looks like. And that could be inside any one of your past lives or past parts of the trail, or even in the Vitality scenario as well. How does that look in daily life? This orchestration and composition and developing this wonderful systematic approach to solving problems while also holding the ambiguity in its proper space. Like, ambiguity bugs a lot of people. I have noticed this. And you literally are aiming for, no one's got any clue on that thing. And we're just going to go sit in front of it for a little while until we figure it out. Then we're going to go to the next ambiguous question, right? So tell me what that looks like on a daily level or weekly level.
Oh, I love this. Well, I was going to say I have two contrasting scenarios that I can share with you. So we'll start with the Vitality one. And then I think I'll share one with you about what that actually looks like in a race crew, because it's two very different situations, but I apply the same type of thinking to how this works. So let's say in the context of building Vitality, as you know, there's all these pieces you have to have in place, right? There's all the non-sexy things, the data room, having the thesis tightened up, having the terms for investors, having your diligence processes that just run like clockwork. There's all the mechanics to make sure that behind the scenes, everything just flows beautifully. That is part that nobody sees, but it's such a critical foundational piece that I intentionally tapped someone who is one of the best people when it comes to operations, systems, infrastructure, is just so ruthlessly efficient and organized that I can say to him, hey, I just want to be out running around and meeting all these amazing people and bringing all these founders to the table to talk to. So I need you to keep me on task. The way I described it to him is it's like the story about Odysseus. He tells his crew, tie me to the mast because there is this wild place I want to go. And I know that when we're out there, we're going to hear the sirens and that makes people go crazy. So you all plug your ears, tie me to the mast, but I want to get out there and see. I want to go into the unknown and push the edges of what is possible. And that means in order for me to do that, I need someone who is so sharp and diligent and focused on systems and operations that I know we will never slip. Similarly, I pulled in another amazing teammate who has deep technical expertise in infrastructure, engineering, agriculture, so that we're also building out the perspective on the team as we go out and we meet with people who are working on deep tech solutions that we know we can go really deep into those conversations, fully get under the hood and understand what's happening from a technical perspective and provide value in terms of connecting to industry partners, understanding the hurdles and challenges, and then bringing together people whose areas of expertise is helping to look at diligence from finance and risk. That's why if I think about your analogy of an orchestra, everybody doesn't have to do everything, but we all know when we have to step in and play our part.
I want to run with this for a second because I want to end this ambiguity in my own mind at some point, which is this picture of a systems thinker. It's got lots of wonderful colors and it's got the beginnings of shape of an outline, but I think I can get a little more detail in here and discover with you. How much of the you go over to the violin section. Are you skilled enough to be able to pick it up and say, hey, no, you guys aren't getting this. Grab someone's violin and play it a few lines and say, really, I need you to play it like this, hand it back to them, and then jump back up to the director's podium? Are you able to sort of dive into those different things at some level, or do you really keep yourself back? What sort of distance do you operate from all those deep zones of specific expertise?
Such a good question. So I always feel like it's really important for me to understand whatever I'm asking a team member to do with enough level of understanding that it's not some vague pie in the sky kind of request. So I have spent plenty of miserable hours for me just dealing with the frustrations of putting together a data room appropriately, even things like if something's going wrong with a particular system or a tool or a website security certificate, whatever. I try to make sure that I'm always in learning mode. So I'll come to every problem and challenge with this kind of humility. Okay, I'm going to learn. I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to understand enough that I know really how difficult this thing is that I'm asking you to do. And that applies to diligence processes. I spend just as much time as everybody else digging in on the financials, the business models, market research. And I know when it's time for me to step back and make sure that I'm not micromanaging. It is kind of this knowing when to zoom in and zoom out, to not get in my own way.
I think about the dashboard and complicated vehicles. The dashboard of my car is super simple: drive, gas pedal, steering wheel, whatever. Then you get into a Boeing 737 and there's a million buttons everywhere. What kind of sensors or signals have you put in place around yourself to tell you, oh, going too deep, time to back out, hand this off? Because I feel like there's an art to that. And some of it is inherent to who you are, but also I think there's probably some skill to be developed there as well. It's just like any good, running is running, but then if you train to run, you become a better runner. So what would you say are little tips and tricks that you have done to help yourself know, okay, I'm in and then I'm pulling out, and then I'm over here and I'm in and pulling out, and now I'm tied to the mast and we're going somewhere new. And now I'm way out away from the team, going out here and exploring, and then I'm coming back. What are some of the things that help guide you?
I like that you said signals, because there are a few things for me. First off, I'm very somatic. So I have a very strong connection with understanding this connection between what's happening for me intellectually, cerebrally, and what's happening with the signals that I'm getting in my body. Now, the reason that this is important is because I do feel like I always have this kind of feedback mechanism going on within my mind and my body, kind of signaling, okay, it's time to reprioritize. Now we understand maybe the right level of depth of the question that should be asked or where it's time to delegate. But I also get a very strong sense this is not where I need to be spending my time anymore. But I would just say it's like a constant feedback mechanism between this external inputs and then what I'm sensing in my core.
You said somatic, and so you open up a whole can here. We're going to go down this road.
Okay.
The idea that I'll lead, right? I'll lead with a little bit of this. Like here we go. When a relationship is not working correctly, I can almost feel like a line in my body going to like from my under my neck to like right here above, opposite side of my heart, right on the top of my chest. Or when there is like something new and exciting and I can feel it new and exciting, I will feel heat on my face. Like I go very literally, like I can start feeling when something has shifted or changed in places in my body. And I'm slowly learning to like make little drawings of this. So when I think about like signals, it's really bizarre and maybe too literal here, but like I will literally have like physical sensations of something, or like I'll know when I get on a business transaction, I will have like multiple days of elevated heart rate whenever I'm overly excited about something and I'm sort of losing myself in the possibility of an opportunity. And I've learned to know like, oh dude, like if you're this excited, you're too excited. You need to dial it back down and start looking at the facts. Like you have now become so excited that you're blind to what's happening and you can't do diligence because literally you're going to read the diligence sheet and you're going to shape everything to say, we should do this deal. Let's go.
Yes.
Does that resonate with you? Do you have some of that? Or is yours just like tight and quiet and deep inside you with these senses of like, it's time, we got to shift. It's time to go.
Oh boy, Ben. But this could be a whole conversation on its own. Like I have so many questions for you, but I'll just start by saying what you just described, that does not sound unusual to me at all. For me, like I'll just give a few examples since you shared yours. When I am sensing that there's an opportunity or there's potential dots to connect, for example, the moment that it hit me, for example, with the vitality thesis, that we could be using biomimicry life principles, tapping into nature's 3.8 billion year R&D lab and apply it to an investment thesis selection criteria, like integrated into the way that we solve a problem. My team teases me about this. They call me Fireball because in those moments when I'm feeling like there's a potential breakthrough that I'm on the verge of, my skin is burning up and it feels, I call it a brain fever. It's literal heat in my brain coming off of my body. So yeah, like that's one extreme example. When I know that I'm somehow drifting into a space of lack of clarity and things get to be a little fuzzy and something like anxiety starts to kick in, it's a very fuzzy feeling in my sternum. And I know I need to stop. I need to write down the question. I need to stop whatever it is I'm just doing, pause and get clarity before I continue. And then, of course, there's things like fear in wild places. I know it immediately. It's my hair stands up on the back of my neck and my fingers start tingling. Those are kind of like big examples, but I notice it in day-to-day life. Sort of gives me a signal like, okay, Natalya, you need to pay attention. You're getting out over your skis a little bit here. Why are we drifting into a space where you're not feeling clear on priorities or clear on the next step? Pause. So you're nodding and you know what this feels like.
Oh, it's a friend of mine a long time ago. We were building a fund back in Fredericksburg, Texas. His name is JP, and JP and I were sitting around having a conversation. He said he had a coaching session once with one of the top 5 hedge fund managers of the era. And the guy, he said, he's like, we didn't talk about numbers or finances at all. We talked about how you make decisions. And he would sit there and say, do these sessions. And he'd be like, hey, I just noticed you have a little nervous tick. Keep doing that tick. And now we're going to pause the conversation, but keep doing the little tick, like you're jiggling your leg or you're tapping your foot or like you're, twizzling something. He's like, keep doing that. And I want you to start telling me what's coming out, like what's coming up in the back of your mind. What are you feeling right now? And he said, that's all this guy did. He worked on like, what are the physical signals of the state that you are in while you're trying to make a decision?
I think it's so interesting.
You can sit me and tell me about AI bots all day long and how the facts are the facts. And I trust facts to a degree, But I also believe that human beings have a level of intuition that's brilliant. And here you have someone who's like tippity top of a worldwide game telling you the same thing. So I think it's okay to pay attention to some of the obvious stuff. Like notice yourself. Think about the people that you trust. The people that you trust know themselves.
Yeah. And learn what those signals are for you and what those kind of feedback mechanisms are like. And, we described some of those other types of signals. A really important signal for me before I'll make an important decision is, to your point, all right, I'm not going to make a big decision when I'm in fiery brain mode or fuzzy sternum or anything. But in the moments when I sink deep, deep down, and there's something coming from my gut that is so steady and calm and grounded, it is often informed by so many inputs. Some of them may be pieces of data, information. Yes, all these things are important, but also our bodies do pick up on something. And you know it. You know if you have a bad feeling about a person, a relationship, a potential deal, it's not going to sit right in your gut. And I think that's why also it's sort of funny to me. We have these sort of colloquial ways of saying things like, I felt it in my gut. But the more we understand about science and physiology, there's actually a very specific reason for that. There are cells that line our GI tract that give us information from the environment before our brain even knows. Pay attention. Yes.
Pay attention. I will say one thing to that point is, well, I'll say two things to that point. One, I learned about this a few years back, but they've developed sort of a spectrometer or spectrograph that is so sensitive that it can actually visually project the lightest little energy pulses. And they were able to put people in dark rooms, and your heart actually emits an energy pulse that's visualized. I mean, this is like a spectrometer, like pictures. We're not talking hocus pocus or like some shaman saying he feels it. Like this is a scientist in a lab pulling people into this like blank room that's like energy dead. So it's like a dead room for sound, energy dead, and seeing your heart emanate an 8-foot radius of pulses. 8 feet. There is so much we can't even begin to understand, but like your hearts basically begin to come in contact before your physical bodies begin sensing other people. And I was having a conversation today with the fund manager about their diligence process. I said, do you go and meet with people in person? And she said, no, but we have our diligence firm does that all the time for us. And it's funny because I had a podcast a couple weeks ago with a guy named Mark Bathgate, who he and I touched on this lightly, but it was very impactful. Like he said, I can't make an investment without being in someone's physical space for an extended period of time and feel any level of confidence in it. Like I need that. And we were trying to articulate like, what's going on there? And I feel like in this conversation, we sort of capped that one to a new level and said, oh, wow, okay. Maybe that's why there's a scientific human connection that's required in order to reach that sort of deep level gut intuitive decision making. My second response is just after COVID, we started doing in-person events. And before COVID, I would say like in-person events were moderately well attended. And like people would come as kind of like, oh, I'm here, whatever. But after COVID, you put out an invite, people show up. And they don't show up with kind of like, moderate intention is what I'll call it. They show up like, ready. And it's become this incredible little advantage. I feel like everyone's like, I'm like, what percentage of your meetings were Zoom before COVID? And they'd be like, 30%. I'm like, what percentage of your meetings are Zoom today? And they're like 80 to 90%. There's an incredible, like we hunger and thirst as human beings for that. And like, I think our brains are pooping out trying to make decisions without the rest of your body being engaged and trying it out. All right. That's my second one. Jump in there. You had something really fun you were going to add.
No, I was just going to say, I have such deep conviction that these tangible, in-person, face-to-face conversations matter significantly. And honestly, it is part of why over the past year, I have made a deliberate attempt to go meet people all across the country. Now, there's a few things that are very interesting about this. Not just doing of course, there's plenty of things you have to do on Zoom. We're having a wonderful conversation via Riverside. I love this. Now, if I'm really trying to understand who somebody is, their context, their world, there is no substitute for me getting my butt over there and seeing what it feels like to walk into their office, their workshop, their town. I'll give you an example. I was in this little town called Florence, Colorado, and they were having a startup pitch event. I thought, oh, cool, I'll stop by. I've been also trying to find kind of founders in sort of overlooked places. And I stopped in and was meeting some people. And this woman got up on the stage, and I think she was 6 months pregnant at the time. And she stood up there. She planted her feet and she said, I want a food revolution in this country. And just the sheer power coming out of her voice and her body. She then went on to explain how she comes from many generations of farmers. You know, she went away to grad school. She's done all these other things, but she was so heartbroken by what's happening to the land that she came back and has successfully built this company, creating technology, tools, and products that go directly after farmers' pain points because she knows it and she's so connected to it. And I remembered after that, I went up and talked to her, and it was just this power coming from this woman. We talked for a few minutes, and then I just remembered thinking, this entrepreneur is going to solve this problem or she's going to die trying. And I followed her progress for a little over a year and then invested. And she is crushing her milestone. Our investment's already marked up, but like, I just don't know that I would have such a sense of conviction in this person being the right person to work on that problem if I hadn't met her. I'm walking around in her town, seeing her world. But I just think, Ben, that, you know, we're so advanced in so many ways. And we have all this amazing technology, all the things that AI enables us to do. It's mind-blowing and it's wonderful in so many ways. And I think at the same time, it's now actually increasing the significance of any opportunity to have that human touch. There are still things we just cannot outsource digitally. So I am with you on this. Show up.
This is going to be such a fun way to land this plane, because everything we've talked about at this point, being a systems thinker, defining that, what it looks like to sort of somatically engage limitations, the composer, orchestrator type role. All of this is so key. And these are all themes in the story of Vitality Venture Fund. This is what you're doing. And this last one being like the perfect through line in my mind, because we're sitting here saying there is a level of an intuition at work in us that can serve our purposes professionally, personally, whatever. And what you are saying with Vitality is you're saying the earth as a living organism also has intuitive solutions, that it isn't, there's no billboards for these solutions. There's no white papers for these solutions, but there are these small little pulse changes. There's these small little signals that the earth is telling us through. And you are literally sitting there and saying like, hey, you have solutions. And in order to find those solutions, you got to be super comfortable with the ambiguity to go kind of sit and listen in a different way than other people are at this point in time. And you can use technology and you can use all these wonderful tools. But in the end, you're going to pull together a little group of people, human beings, who care about solving world problems using world-based solutions. You talk about those as biomimicry is such a fun term. But I just like kind of drew a rough through line, but I feel like you got to bring it home, girl. And you got to tell us like, so what is Vitality up to? And tell me what you're doing, because all this comes together in what you're doing now.
So the fundamental question that kicked off the entire process of building Vitality, what would it look like to build a world of vitality? So like, just imagine for 1 second, I'm going to go get right to the point, but imagine a world of exuberant life force. There's no pesticides in our bodies. There's no forever chemicals in the soil. We've got a vibrant earth that enables us to live with vigor. Okay, cool. That sounds very poetic and visionary. Yeah, that's the world that I want to live in. That's the world that I want to create. And when I go out and I run 100 miles in the mountains, that's how I want to feel. So what does that mean when it comes down to actually building something practical, establishing an investment thesis, pulling all these pieces together? You just start to play with those questions. What types of solutions would be needed? What type of people need to be creating those? What resources and types of capital needs to go to those to fuel them and bring them to life?
Oh, systems thinking. Wow. Shocker.
I'm just showing you real time. This is how this came about. And therefore, what better way to think about how to solve complex, dynamic, evolving problems than to go right to the source? What if we tapped into nature's intelligence? And nature is really freaking smart, really, really elegant about creating these solutions that have been tested over time. So here are the things that really drew me to biomimicry. It's an approach, it's a lens to say, could we solve problems by applying life's principles, using life-friendly chemistry, resilience, energy and resource efficient. And you know what's beautiful about that? Those types of products and solutions are also really valuable in the market. I'm not talking about philanthropy here. I'm talking about real world solutions that are needed in the market that are going to be good for industry. And oh, by the way, really good for the environment and human health. To me, it's just the smart thing to do. It does take effort to pull in the right people because it does require, I know this word is overused, but an ecosystem. You need corporate partners. You really need to be thinking about things that require support from non-dilutive capital on the R&D front, some patient capital to get through key hurdles. From inception to implementation, all of it requires systems. So I'm obsessed. What can I say?
I'm going to draw a really strange connection here, but I've interviewed quite a few oil and gas people on this podcast that I've spent a lot of time with over the past years. And it's interesting because they would all be so excited about what you're talking about. And you're going to sit here and be like, oil and gas people excited what I'm talking about? I would say, yes, very excited. Because if you think about the history of oil and gas, what crude oil replaced was whale oil.
Yes. I love that you just mentioned it.
They were the original. They're like, man, we have got a depleting energy reserve here. This is unsustainable. The oceans are being emptied and we can't, like, whale oil ain't the answer. And some guy found, dinosaur juice and whale juice and all this great sort of biomass that they could use to, replace killing whales and reharvesting the oceans. Now, I think what has happened and what I think my friends would agree with is, like, we found a nature solution that worked really, really well. And we just all went, we tend to do this. We went for it. And it's like, we kept hitting that button again and again and again and again. This is working. But you have this inherent mindset of people who are looking at the earth for a systematic solution. And I think what you're bringing, which is this incredible enhancement, which is so funny because, like, I want to tell all my oil and gas investors how fun this would be, right? Hey, let's go invest in oil and gas royalties and then take money and then go look for what nature is providing that is diverse and dynamic. Because there is what you're describing too, in the way and the places that you're looking has this mirroring to a biodynamic world, like multiple solutions from multiple places, so that we're not just like putting all of our eggs in one basket that the world provides to us. We're going to look for multiple solutions all at the same time that solve different things in different ways, because if you look around, that's just how nature works. It works not on a monoculture, but within biodiversity as a concept. I think it's such a fun evolution to think about, right? Like, okay, so we killed the whales are coming back. Thank goodness we had oil saved the whales. Now oil is becoming volatile and everyone's sort of concentrated on this. And we're going to go now and look for the next thing or the next things, because we've realized, like, don't put too much pressure on one part of the world. And by the way, like, it actually has solutions. I love your website, by the way. Everyone go to vitalityvf.com. And her first 3 pictures are what we're talking about here, which is you have this wonderful desert image. And what people in the desert built homes out of was rock and clay and mud. And then you've got this wonderful picture of a forest. And what people built homes out of in the forest was wood. It was the abundant resource in the area. And I think that's like, you're taking that mindset, applying systems thinking to it and going exponentially. Okay, great. What can we do to provide varied solutions in varied areas for various types of people? And I love it.
Oh, Ben, you get it. And by the way, all of those are my pictures.
Yes.
From places that I have run. So yes, those are pictures from the desert in Moab, where I ran the Moab 240, the LaSalle Mountains, and the beautiful trees and forests there. The other one is up in the mountains outside of Leadville, Colorado at Hope Pass. I wanted to actually use photographs of places that I have spent time in that have significance. And yes, the subtext there is there are all these incredible learnings and all this knowledge that we can draw from nature in different settings and different contexts. And it's so funny. You mentioned the thing about wood and trees. I was just on a call right before this with a team that's creating solutions for built environment with a nature inspired kind of wood solution. Fascinating. And then, of course, there's Reef Cycle I told you about. They're mimicking shells and reefs to create cement at room temperature. I just think this is an exciting time. I know lots of people are facing very difficult things all around the world, and I just cannot repress the sense of optimism right now that I sense as we face this new kind of era where, on the one hand, everything is moving so fast and we're depleting natural resources and we're floundering about to understand who we are and what's the future of work. At the same time, we have this fascinating an exciting moment to take modern tech and advances and this kind of ancient wisdom of nature and adapt. Let's find the next track.
Everyone needs to go to vitalityvf.com. And then if you're too cool to do that and you're stuck on your phone inside LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Natalya Wallin. Just look at my page and she's a friend of mine. Natalya, and then Wallin is Wallin. How can we join you in the journey? What kind of people are you looking for to jump in right now?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I would love for you to, yes, go to the website and check out the founders that we've already invested in. Those women are absolutely incredible. So I would love it if you guys can give them some love and follow them on LinkedIn and be part of their journey. And then, look, I am always looking to meet entrepreneurs, founders, corporates, people who touch any piece of this puzzle across all of these industries, specifically in our themes around regenerative agriculture, built environment, and spaces like biomanufacturing. I just want to meet the builders, the creators, people who are going to build the future world that we want to see. I'm up for it. And most likely I'll come find you and have coffee in person.
Heck yes. Heck yeah. I just wrote down 3 people that I know I'm going to send this podcast to and just be like, hey, if you haven't listened to the other ones, this one for sure, for you. Give it some time.
I welcome any introductions from you, Ben. This has been so much fun.
Oh, Natalya, thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for going to the deep spots. I mean, we achieved the at depth mission very, very quickly and stayed at depth, I think, wonderfully throughout the conversation. Again, everyone, I encourage you all to find some way to just track what Natalya is doing. Follow her posts on LinkedIn. They're always interesting, beautiful photographs, incredible thoughts every day coming out of her. She has invited you on ways to engage. That's wonderful. Thank you all for joining us today and for following us through this incredible, incredible through line. Natalya, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us for this intentional conversation at depth. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a moment to subscribe and follow along. You can do this at theatdepthpodcast.com. Again, that's theatdepthpodcast.com. You'll find new episodes, show notes, and more conversations with entrepreneurs who are building what really matters. Until next time, keep going deeper and keep building at depth.